welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris back with another Rumour Has It video, but this time Mark has decided to join me because we have got a bit of a transfer window update. Everything is heating up for Newcastle United at the minute after a bit of a slow start. It's safe to say, Mark, isn't it? We've got a few updates to go through, mate.
Yeah, I have one pretty major one and a couple of well, maybe they'll happen, maybe they won't before the end of the window on Tuesday. But the one looks done. He's here. Anthony Gordon is in the northeast, having had his medical or having his medical. So here we go.
We're going to get stuck right into it. So just before we do a little bit of housekeeping, as we always do, a little reminder, if it's the first time you've watched us, nice to see you. Welcome on board. Click that subscribe button if you can. Come and join us. There's loads of room for you here. We're on 2,440, I think, or 39 subscribers. So we're creeping up to 2,500, which is amazing. We've only been going just over a year. Loads of room for you guys, all free content, just football chats and some fucking killer stats from the main man, which we're going to get stuck into in a second. So as Mark said there, the big one is Anthony Gordon. So this one was rumbling away. It has divided the fan base a little bit. Mark is going to show you some unbelievable stats in a minute that might just change your opinion on Anthony Gordon. But just to talk a little bit about the deal, Mark. So the deal, it's all going around everywhere now. Sky and everybody's reporting it. He's, like you said, he's arrived for his medical. We've seen that mop of blonde hair walking into Benton to go through his rigorous tests, etc., etc. But the deal is 40 million quid plus 5 million bonuses. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of Anthony Gordon, and I'm pretty sure we'll all be seeing this picture, which is a brilliant mock-up, but it'll be legitimate very, very soon, Mark, when Anthony Gordon pulls on that black and white shirt. As I mentioned, this has divided the fan base quite a bit. And we had a good chat about this. You guys had a good chat about it as well on the show this Wednesday. I mean, there is a player here, Mark, and you're about to tell people exactly what kind of player we're going to be getting, aren't you?
Yeah, look, he's 21. He's been pretty much an integral part of that Everton side for the last couple of seasons, an Everton side that has struggled. I think that's key to remember when we do look at his stats and the way that he's performed, particularly this season, is that Everton side has been absolutely dreadful. So he brings a wealth of talent and hard work, and that's where he sort of fits this Eddie Howe mold. So if he can translate what he's already done in that graft and that grit and determination that he has, and progress under Eddie Howe, he's just going to take it to another level. So I'll bring up his stats. So on the face of it, attacking wise, he hasn't looked particularly brilliant. It does seem a little bit harsh. His goals, his shots particularly, are in the higher sort of percentile. So he's sitting in above 60. The 60th percentile. Shots on target, he's right up there in the 96th percentile. But his passing, his contributions, his assists is really, really low. And I think that's just
a poor side, as you say, Mark.
It is a very poor side. He's had very little to work with in terms of striker. Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't played an awful lot of football. He's been asked to play almost as a striker at times. He's also been asked to play as a wing back, as a wide player, as an attacking midfielder. So he's done an awful lot of sort of playing in different positions. But primarily where you want him is sort of on the wing and playing in those wide forward positions, because that's where he gets himself into those goal creating and goal scoring opportunities. So I've compared him to Almiron just because the basis of it is when you look at his heat map, he's played in pretty much the same position. And Almiron is streets ahead of him into pretty much every metric there, bar shots on target and crosses.
And a season of Miggy's life, though, Mark, isn't it? It's a season of Miggy's life.
Well, it absolutely is. But that you go back a season or two, or go back a season, and those stats are a little bit better. And let's not forget, he is only 21. So there's a base to work with there for Eddie Howe and the coaching staff, and he is an exciting player. He does like to get on the ball. He does like to cut inside. I think we'll see him work very well from the left, cutting in on his sort of right foot, and using that nous, that in-game intelligence that he showed. Yes, he can be a bit of a shithouse, but he's very intelligent on the ball. He does spot people's runs. There are clips of him, where he spots the run of people, a little bit like Miggy's ball through to Joe Linton against Leicester. There's that cleverness at times. I think we'll start to see much more of that. But I think the key thing, and this also goes alongside the way that Almiron has played this season, is this, and it's his work rate for the team. To be in the really high percentiles of all his defensive attributes, bar fouls committed. So he does commit a lot of fouls, but he is right up there in terms of tackles won, tackles in every area of the field. He gets in, blocks passes, ball recoveries is in the 43rd percentile, which is good for a wide player in that regard. And I think that goes to show that he's played in those multiple positions. So he does do an awful lot of work. Like I say, he's been asked to do different roles. He's been asked to play in sort of the forward areas. He's been asked to play in the midfield areas and sort of as a wing back as well. So he gets involved. He's not afraid of being able to play across the park. He's quite willing to do whatever you need in that regard. And I think it's that work ethic that Eddie Howe wants. He wants that type of player to come in. And if he's going to play down the left-hand side and be the opposite of Miggy, I think that then, opens up that channel for a little bit more threat. We've seen the way that Newcastle have opened up teams with Joe Linton and Willock down that side, with a lack of end product at times from Willock. I think Gordon will give you a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I don't disagree, mate. I mean, I think what's been lost in all the noise here of just generally, it's all kind of stemmed off the back of him having a little ruck with Trippier and Shaw, really. At St James's is where a lot of the negativity from the fan base has come. But if you looked at crosses you pulled up there, he puts balls in the box. Now, we talked about Wilson being a bit off form. Once Wilson gets himself right, and hopefully he will in a couple of weeks, Wilson will be licking his chops for the guy that can put crosses in like that, because Wilson will get on the end of them. Isak's not bad in the air. We've seen him score a header as well, to be fair to him. It's really exciting to have a player like this coming in. People have forgot he is rapid. He's one of the fastest players in the league. Now, Joe Willock has, I always say has hidden pace. People don't realize how quick Joe Willock is, and he is really, really quick. But I think Lee made Carl possibly made a point as well on Wednesday that Willock looks shot. He looks knackered. He really looks tired, as much as he's got loads of energy. They all look a bit ropey, a little bit leggy. We're obviously going to talk about a couple of other players too here, but we definitely need more people in this squad, because this squad, if they're realistically going to push for the top four, we need more bodies. We need people to come in and do jobs. Now, you might say 45 million quid is a lot for a body, but I agree with you, Mark. I think how, in Ashworth see the Gordon that was the season before, and they see the promise. I mean, listen, Chelsea wanted to pay 50 million quid for this kid in the summer. He's not a bad player. We're going to get him for cheaper than that. So I think we've done quite a decent bit of business here. And I honestly think once Gordon signs, once he gets in that side, I think a lot of people who have the doubts about Mark, it'll be like Craig Bellamy. It'll be a bit like Joey Barton. Once they put on a black and white shirt, once they put it in and start sticking some tackles on people and getting in their face, everyone will love them.
Yeah, absolutely right. I had this conversation, funny enough, with my barber yesterday, and he said the same thing. He said once you hate Craig Bellamy when he's not playing against you, you hate the likes of Joey Barton when he's playing against you. My example was Robbie Savage earlier in the week. Absolutely despise the man, but put him in your side. Yeah, exactly. Birmingham City fans absolutely loved him. But you have that player in your side, and you're 100% behind them. You need that behind them. The quality that let's go back to the quality that Gordon does bring, though. In that struggling side, in 90 minutes played this season in the Premier League, he scored 3 goals. He scored 4 last season. So he's a threat going forward. He's not just about those numbers in front of you, because they do look. And I'm aware that those numbers don't look particularly brilliant in terms of his goal creation and his shot creation sort of actions. But the one thing we're going back to is just how poor an Everton side they are this season. And he's still, to an extent, shone. He's not been exceptional. I'm not going to go and say that he's been the best player by any stretch of the imagination. But he still looked good. He still scored goals. He still got into those positions. And he works damn hard, and that's exactly what you get. And I think we'll see him flourish under Eddie Howe now.
Absolutely. You do those stats in another 6 months' time, Mark, and I think they'll look very different. I really,
Absolutely
really do.
right.
When he's got players like Isak and Wilson around him that can finish those passes he's putting through, his assist numbers will go up through the roof. But yeah, so I think he'll be signed, sealed, delivered today, probably. They'll probably do a little bit of media, I'd imagine, at the club over the weekend. He's cup tied, so he can't play in the return leg. On Tuesday, I believe he's cup tied. I think we had a conversation on Wednesday, didn't we? So he's probably more in line to make his debut against West Ham on Saturday the 4th. But I think he might be brought out in front of the crowd, possibly with another couple of signings, which is a lovely segue. You know, I love a segue. We're going to move into another segue there of players. So the next player we're talking about, so Gordon is a tick. That's pretty much done deal. We're just waiting for it to be announced. The next one is the breaking news that's just come out on Sky Sports. Is that Harrison Ashby, the young West Ham right back, who is this fella here, if you don't know who he is, Scotland under-21 international, he has been a topic of conversation for quite some time in our transfer stories. Now, Kieran Trippier signed a new deal, Mark, didn't he? Till 2025, which is amazing because Trips has been, in my opinion, probably the best Newcastle signing for the last 20 years. He's been unbelievable. And he's the start of this whole project. But he ain't getting any younger. He's still class. But I think the plan is to obviously have somebody who can step in and take over from Trippier when he does eventually hang the boots up. And Ashby, if you don't know him, if you haven't seen him, everybody, he's very Trippier-esque, Mark, isn't he? He gets up and down that line. He's got good delivery. He's good from dead balls. West Ham are digging their heels and they've rejected a bid from us. Is it a case of West Ham just wanting to fleece mega-rich Newcastle out of more money, do you think, mate?
Well, they're not going to be able to stretch him too far. Like, he's out of contract in the summer. At most, if Newcastle go, well, do you know what? We'll wait. It'll go to sort of tribunal fee, won't it? Because he'll class as one of their homegrown that they will still get something for, even if he is out of contract. So I think West Ham will dig their heels in a little bit, but I think it's probably a case of Newcastle bid, West Ham say, no, we want some more. Newcastle go, well, you're going to lose him for such amount because it's not going to be an awful lot through tribunal. You're talking a couple of 100,000 probably in that regard. We'll give you this, take it or leave it, and then it'll get done. So I've no issues there at all.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. I mean, he's 21-year-old lad as well. I mean, for him, it's a great move for his career. What better player to learn off than Kieran Trippier to become a player on the next level? He's already got a lot of good traits about him. But at 21 years old, he's not going to expect to start every game. He can be great cover for Trippier. He can come in. He can, have some substitute appearances. We've got European football hope for next season. He can play a little bit in that as well and really bleed his way into the side. So yeah, I'm with you, mate, 100%. I think that one's pretty much that'll get done. I think I'll be shocked if that one. Turns into a tribunal. I think West Ham will get that done. The lad will move on, and then hopefully we'll have a good contingency for Trippier. But there is one more we're going to finish on, and it's a biggie. And there's a lot of noise going on about a certain James Maddison, who has dominated Newcastle United's transfer rumours and stories probably ever since the takeover, really. Now, we all know we put 2 bids in for Maddison over the summer. Got rejected. It looked very much like the player wanting to be here. There's been the mischief making with the England camp, all of this stuff as well. Like every transfer window, there's always one massive shock move towards the back end of the window, and there's no smoke without fire, Mark. There's a little bit rumbling on about Maddison, isn't there, in the background here, mate?
Yeah, so there was it the Leicester Mercury, I think, had a piece this morning to say that Leicester there'd been a concrete bid from an unnamed club.
Yeah.
I think it probably doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out who that probably is at this point.
Yes, I would say so.
I think there's limited places in terms of where he could go. There's probably 2. I don't think Chelsea will be shopping in that market given what they've spent so far, but we rule them out at our peril.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think with Trossard having gone to Arsenal, I don't think Arsenal will. Although, having said that, I think that will depend on Thomas Partey's injury. Obviously, he went off last night, so that he's not going to play in that position. But maybe there's another body in there that's I guess a possibility, but unlikely. Manchester United aren't going to sign somebody like that with the players that they've already got. He's not going to be in City's radar, I don't think. So Liverpool's probably the only other one that you would imagine would be shopping in and around that sort of area.
Spurs have fell off the map, haven't they? He's not going to go to Spurs. No chance. No. They were always linked to him in the past, weren't they?
Well, yeah, but and they've just signed Danjuma on loan, so with the option to buy, so that looks unlikely. So I think it falls down to very much likely Newcastle is the team that's bid. Liverpool are probably the only other team that would be there. I mean, I could be wrong, but I would suggest that Newcastle are probably that side. And I mean, what an amazing we've talked about this so many times, but what an amazing signing that would be.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just looking there as well because there is news that Tete's on his way to Leicester from Lyon, and he plays a very similar kind of position to Maddison. So you're putting kind of two and two together here, and it all seems to be dropping into place. There's always these merry-go-rounds and transfer windows. Now, Maddison as well is also the big thing Newcastle fans have jumped on, the magical world of social media. He's decided to start following a lot of Newcastle players on Instagram. Some people have poo-pooed it. Some people are totally on board with it, tinfoil hats and all. But he has followed people like Matty Targett and Jacob Murphy. Now, that kind of dispels he's just followed his England teammates a little bit. Yeah, they could have the same agent. We don't know what's going on, But it does seem to be a very interesting thing a player would do when they're linked to a club, is to start following all of your potential new teammates, isn't it, Mark? So there's got to be no smoke without fire, as we say there, mate.
Yeah, I think it's an odd one from him if he has done it like that, because you're almost saying that it's going to happen, but why would you? Why? Like you say, it's an odd time to have done it, and the number of ones that he's supposedly followed is incredible. And you're right, when you look at it and go, well, it could just be the England links, and then you throw in the likes of Matty Targett and Jacob Murphy. Got to be fair with the utmost respect to them. They're not going to, certainly Target's not going to break into that England squad.
No.
So it's that kind of dispels that myth, I think. But look, I mean, if Newcastle could end the window with Anthony Gordon, Harrison Ashby, and James Maddison, Tuesday night's going to get a little bit more interesting, isn't it? In terms of atmosphere.
Even if you thought it could do, my God, I mean, I'm lucky I'm going to the game. PK's managed to blag me a ticket, which I know you're not very happy with me for, mate, because you wanted to come along as well. But I've managed to get a ticket for it, which is going to be incredible. But we're going to try and do a post-match reaction almost straight after the game if we can. Just, maybe drinking some of that atmosphere at the time, which would be unbelievable if Newcastle win that game, which hopefully we will. But you're right, Mark. I mean, if you can bring out those players, and no disrespect to Gordon or Ashby, certainly, but if you had James Maddison walk on that pitch and they said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome your new signing, James Maddison, the fucking noise from that crowd. Could you imagine what James Maddison would feel like to hear that noise? I mean, even seeing that atmosphere with the flags and the scarves and everything for those three players alone would be like, oh my God, look at this. But Maddison, the roar he would get if he walked out the pitches in James's Park, mate, if you could bottle that and sell it, you'd be the richest person on the planet. You really would.
Absolutely, I've no doubt that if that was to happen, I'd be able to hear it from the coast. So there you go. That's
Absolutely,
it. Will be. It's gonna. Yeah. It's gonna be loud anyway. Yeah, exactly.
Coast, not even the northeast coast. But on a serious football note, to end on the Maddison thing, I think the whole thing with Maddison was, I think he wanted to go in the summer. The player wanted to move. Spoke to Leicester about it, everything else. I think if Fofana hadn't went, Maddison would have went, because they couldn't have sold both of them, because they would have left themselves short. Now, Fofana went, Maddison stayed. And I think Maddison stayed on the premise that you can go in January. Now, Leicester were struggling big time. From a football perspective, some people even throwing a bit of shade on Maddison, saying he's a party boy, he's all this, he's all that. I think he showed a hell of a lot of leadership during that time when Leicester were struggling. And he almost single-handedly dragged them out of the shit. And he got himself in the England squad just because of the sheer level of just appreciation of what a good footballer he was countrywide. It was almost a bit like when Grealish forced his way in the England squad. It was kind of a bit like that. It's almost like Southgate's hand was forced to take him. Never played him, but he was forced to take him because he was that good. And I think Leicester gave him some assurances that if Newcastle come back in January, you can go. And I think that's why Rodgers has been very sheepish about him, very sheepish about the status of his injury and when he's getting back to the side, Mark. I mean, am I being a conspiracy theorist? Do you think there's a bit of weight behind that?
Tinfoil hat time. No, I think the assurance is probably given that if Leicester weren't in and around that sort of top 4, top 6, that he would be allowed to move on either in January or in the summer. Has he got a year left on his deal from the summer?
Yes,
As
I think
well.
so.
So
Yeah.
if they're going to make any money out of him, it has to be now or it has to be in the summer. And the sooner they do it, the more they get out of it. And we know from the rumblings that Leicester aren't particularly flush with cash.
Mm-hmm.
So it does open the door, and I think the signing of Tete does open that a little bit wider for the possibility, and maybe, like we say, you could end up Tuesday with all three of these guys in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Instagram thing is probably people grasping at straws, really. But I do think, I do think in the corridors of football journalism and everything else. I mean, we're not football journalists, but this story has never gone away. Maddison and Newcastle has never gone away. So there's got to be a definitive interest from both parties for that story to have rumbled on and been in the forefront of journalists' mind and on a sketch pad for the length of time that it has been. Yeah, and for me, Mark, I mean, I'm going to stick my neck out there, but I think the Maddison deal will get done. I think this is the big one. This is remember seasons gone by where Berbatov went to Man United and Rubinho rocks at the Man City. I think that's our turn to get that deal done this window. I think this will be the big deal this window that just catches everybody like, wow, Jesus Christ, that's actually happened. And what a player he would be and what options he would give us, Mark, in that side, you know, to even alleviate some of that pressure on Bruno to be the creative influence all the time. Having Maddison there and allowing Bruno to just play his game, because I do think at times we expect too much from Bruno, and I really think we put a little bit too much pressure on him. Because he was a defensive midfielder, you know, when we signed him. And now, because he even said in the interview with Sky, which was one of the most charming interviews I've ever seen, and his missus was brilliant as well, by the way, Bruno. What a family they've got there. But even he said he was surprised by the goals he scored. He was laughing because that's not his game normally. So, you know, we maybe can't expect that from Bruno all of the time. You know, so having Maddison there as an option, my God, that just puts us in a different stratosphere altogether. But do you think Mark hand on heart? Do you think these three in before the window, or is it 2 of 3?
I think definitely 2 of 3. I think obviously Gordon's done with pretty much, other than a signing on the dotted line. I think Ashby will get done, and I think Maddison is one that more than likely. If I was going to put many, if I was PK, I would probably put a couple of quid on it.
Bet responsibly.
I'm not, so I won't, because I don't bet.
No.
I always lose.
No,
so
me neither. No.
But it looks more likely, doesn't it? And I think if they can take as much as they can, if you're talking in the region of 50 odd million, I think it's a hell of a deal. Absolutely. And if they can do a little bit of a Chelsea and stretch that over a few years, then it just means that FFP isn't so much of an issue. I don't think we're going to see 6, 7, 8 year contracts.
No.
But certainly over maybe 5.5 years, it just brings that cost down for FFP purposes. So.
And more importantly as well, it goes to show you that they're backing Eddie Howe. You know, he wasn't happy that Chris Wood was allowed to go without a replacement coming in. If he ends up with those 3 players, I think he'll be more than happy that his squad has been injected with quality and with some depth as well, that he can change things, he can move things around, you know, and, you know, in the lead up to this top 4, I mean, Christ, people can still say we're in the title race for all they want, but in the race for this top 4, having those extra bodies in and that quality and the ability to rotate and take players out. I don't think Maxi will leave. I'd be surprised at that. You know, I know there was talk about that, but I would be very surprised if Maxi left. Certainly after the way that Eddie Howe was talking about him and the way Maxi was talking about how him and he's like want to change games. I think Maxi's probably staying at least till the summer. But yeah, if we can get those 3, Mark, I mean, wow, what a window that's going to be for us. Unbelievable.
Oh God, absolutely right. And like I say, if you have walk all 3 of those out on the pitch on Tuesday, just that starts. I mean, Southampton must be dreading that. They're not going to play, but just the ramp up of the atmosphere and that the cauldron of noise that's going to create is just going to be incredible.
Mate, absolutely electric. I can't wait for it. We're going to be back soon with a match preview. And as I said, we'll try and do a live match reaction straight after the game. We're going to be back as well with what's going on and Evermore next week. Evermore straight after the Southampton game and the transfer window. So we'll have loads to talk about in that episode, I'm sure. So as I said at the start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. All free content here. Just a bunch of Newcastle fans talking about the club that we love in exciting times as well. You know, potential League Cup final, new players coming in, top 4. What a season this has been so far, and it's only getting better and better. So thank you so much for watching. Like I say, make sure you smash the buttons, like the video, more importantly as well, helps get around YouTube. And this is me and Mark signing off, and we'll be back with some more Newcastle crack soon. See you later, everyone.
Take care.